for somebody else or a big company even and punch a clock there as a full-time employee in order to pay your bills? Well, we're going to talk about that and more in this episode of Farm Talk here. But first, if you think that America was generally better off before five companies controlled 90% of the pork market in the United States, then you should subscribe to this channel so that we can make America farmers again. And we can do that together because I believe that fundamentally, farming is not just about how many animals you own or how much land you possess. It involves a discussion of culture, and that's what we're trying to build here. And you can build that without owning any land, without owning any chickens or pigs, cows, or anything like that. It starts with an attitude and a cultural mindset of saying, this is something that we can do. I'm Steven, and this is Rowan Ridge Farm, and I'm raising pigs on pasture the old fashioned way, nothing super fancy, not any super fancy genetics or anything like that, but I believe that it's important for people to have a direct connection to the food that they're eating and producing for their community. So I would love to have you guys along for that. So today, I'm actually in the parking lot of the hospital where I work here in central New Hampshire. I'll leave it relatively vague. And what I am doing here is, well, this is my job, and I work here between 3 and 5 days a week, depending on the length of the shift. And I started farming and nursing right around the same exact time. Actually, within a couple weeks of each other, is when I started. I got my pigs like literally the week that I started working in the hospital here. And we hear on social media people talking about comparison being the thief of joy. And I watch other channels on YouTube that deal with farming and agriculture. And one of the things that I feel like is always sort of an unspoken value is the idea that if your farm is really working and you're really doing a good job with it, and it's a legit farm, that you can feed your family, you can pay your mortgage and put gas in the tank of whatever vehicle that you're also paying for, or maybe that you already own, based on that income that you're making from your farm. And so I've gone back and forth over the last 4 years that I've been farming, kind of sitting on the fence because sometimes I'm glad that I have off-farm income and that I have a little bit of redundancy and freedom that's afforded to me by not having to worry about if my sow squashes one piglet too many, then I'm going to have to tell my kids that, hey, eat not so fast. We're going to have to make that pizza last until tomorrow, right? In some ways it's beneficial. And if you're just joining the stream here, I would love to hear where you guys are from. Kelly Dutter, hello. Gavin, 20 bucks if you squash. I'm not squashing anything, but here, listen, while I have you guys here, I would love it if you subscribe to this channel. We are making America farmers again because generally speaking, I think we can all agree that the food supply and the food system was much better when five companies didn't own 90% of the American pork market, and when food was being grown and provided for people within their own communities. And if you agree with that, subscribe to this channel so that we can actually continue that conversation and build culture together in line with this. So, well, yeah, if you subscribe, that's a great question. No, I'm not giving money out, not at this point, maybe eventually. What you get from subscribing is you're starting to take steps towards being able to have some participation in the old-fashioned world of farming that is sorely missing from our society today. And Kelly, yes, I do like soccer. I actually used to play soccer when I was a young lad. I played in college for a little bit until they replaced everybody with Scottish guys, and then I said to hell with this, and I just played club for the last couple of years. But anyways, to get back to the topic at hand, the whole concept here is that there's sort of this mixed feeling about having off-farm income. It's like if you're a real farmer, you should be able to make your living from what you're doing on your farm. And I've gone back and forth with that, like I said, because there's sometimes I like having the freedom and the redundancy of having an income that is not reliant on what my animals are doing. And if I have to worry about my, sow squashing one baby too many, and then I got financial problems as a result, that puts you in a position where you have a lot less freedom to make different choices, to say, hey, you know what, I want to try something different, which is one of the things that I think is fundamentally lacking from the way that agriculture and farming are done on a broad scale today. And that's something I'm going to stream about and talk about more in future episodes of Farm Talk. So if you're not subscribed, go ahead and do that. And this is an ongoing conversation. But I honestly think that where I'm at right now, and I do get irritated and frustrated with having to work at a hospital, because there is no other industry that I'm aware of that is more regulated than medicine. Today, I was just in a meeting where I was being told that I couldn't return phone calls to people that had been my patients while I was here. I'm a diabetes educator, and I can't call people back on the phone because I am not a provider. I'm not a doctor or a prescriber. I'm a nurse, an RN, but I can't, since I'm not an advanced practice nurse, I can't call people back and say, hey, like, how are things going? Is there anything like you need any help with? Because I just maybe taught you for a couple of days in the hospital how to inject yourself with insulin. Can't do that. And there's all good reasons with good intentions, but at the end of the day, it's regulations that make everything hateful and impossible, and frankly, very ineffective and inefficient. And that is certainly the topic that is going to come up next week, when I'm going to be streaming and talking about the reasons why small farmers are not able to compete with the massive agricultural industry, and why there are 5 farms that pretty much own the entire pork market in the United States, where we used to all feed ourselves in our own communities, and none of these companies ever existed. And somehow people did not starve to death. But now you can't buy bacon. I don't care what company it is. It's pretty much all Smithfield, and that's owned by the Chinese. Nothing against Chinese people, but do I think that they should be owning our food supply in the United States? And if you look at the way just farming is done, generally speaking, it's bad for the environment, it's bad for the economy, it's bad for our health, and it's bad for farming as a practice overall. And so that is why I'm encouraging people to make America farmers again, and it starts right here, and it starts with what we're consuming. It's not just strictly about owning livestock, although I certainly want to encourage you guys to do that too. But having off farm income is as frustrating as the medical system with all of its regulations, as much as that irritates me on a frequent basis. Being able to weather storms financially on the farm, rather than being reliant on my customers and having to say, well, if my customers don't like this, I'm out of business, so I'm just going to do whatever they want me to do. Or have to worry about, there's bad weather for a stretch. You have a wet spring or a dry summer. I know farmers who grow for example, the farmer who grows the corn and the soy and the barley that all go into my pig feed. It's a farmer who's like an hour and a half away from me. And last summer, it was really wet over a certain period of time, and he was really concerned about not being able to make, his financial obligations based on the impact that the weather was having on his crops. And I have concerns about those type of things, certainly with the pigs, because, well, I have to worry about outside market forces like political things that cause the price of fuel to go up, that cause the price of corn to go up, that cause the price of hog food to go up. But I also have to worry about things like, if the weather's really cold when I'm having my piglets, or it's warm and all the snow, and we got a heavy snow year here in New Hampshire. And now, like, the area where the animals are normally farrowing and giving birth is turned into a mud pit, and it's harder to keep the babies and the mamas clean. And you have various other problems like that are, beyond one's control as a farmer. And now all of a sudden, what I thought was going to be 50 piglets has turned into maybe 30 piglets. And that loss represents a big challenge that I can't just get over. Because farming, there is money in farming. Don't let anybody tell you that there is not money in farming. The problem, what there is not in farming, is cash flow. So you put in a lot of money up front. For example, it takes about, just to illustrate the money that is in farming, both in the cost and also in the benefit or the reward after the fact. To produce a litter of piglets, it takes just under 4 months, 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days, give or take, to produce a litter of piglets. And during all of that time, you have to house, treat for medical issues, worming, bedding, make sure that everybody's happy and fed during those 4 months. And you're putting all of that money in hopes that there is going to be a payoff. Now, when the payoff comes, you get a litter of pigs, you sell that, you have money to work with, and now all of a sudden everything is right with the world. But then, of course, as soon as that happens, well, you have to be looking at the next 4 month cycle and how and where is that gonna pay off for you because you got money now, but in another couple of months, all that money that you're holding, that money has to go into fixing the barn. That's got to go into buying wormer and ivermectin for your animals. That's got to go into buying feed and supplements for the animals. It's also got to go into potentially buying new breed stock, or if you have to butcher some of those animals, it's got to go into butchering fees and processing fees. Not to mention, like, business fees and things like that, and other consumables that are kind of part of the ongoing process of farming. And so you have to be thinking about all those things because it's not a consistent supply of money that's coming in. It's something that happens in spurts, and you spend a lot of money in one shot and then you have nothing and you're moderately horrified, and then all of a sudden you get a lot of money dropping in your lap when your piglets are here, right? Or when you're selling pork in the fall. But there's a lot of times in between when you don't have cash flowing, and during those times having off farm income is so helpful. It is so beneficial because, look, I expected bigger litters from some of my mamas this spring. I had one sow, fantastic sow. She totally shit the bed on me. This is her second time. She's going to sausage sometime in the summer. And it was a bummer because I had some people who were really excited about buying her piglets. And they thought, she's big, beautiful animal, not so good as a mother. And at the end of the day, I'm paying her to make babies. I'm not paying her to look good. I'm talking about my sow herd. So I'm paying her to make babies and paying her way, and then she's going to make me money enough to keep going with that relationship by having those piglets, and then I can sell those. And when there's no piglets to sell, then what am I left with? I can't take out of my own pocket to feed her, right? So she's got to go to sausage. So the point is that litter is something I was planning on. I had people who had put reservations in around Thanksgiving and said, "Hey, we're looking for piglets." And I factored her into my planning and said, "Okay, this is going to be a litter that I'm going to have. I'm going to sell these animals. It's going to be great," right? And then you take those deposits, and then when the babies wind up not coming because mama squashes everybody in her litter and they all die, well, it does suck, and that does set me back financially, and I'm concerned about that. But I don't have to say, "Okay, you know what? I'm gonna start selling off my animals. I'm gonna start selling off my equipment. I'm gonna start selling off my property. I'm gonna get out of farming. I have to cash in my chips and do something else." I have the redundancy of knowing, look, I can spot myself a little extra money because I also work off the farm. The other thing about working off farm that I think is really positive is the fact that it gives me an opportunity to engage with my community and be part of a community that I wouldn't otherwise have access to. And I'm not trying to stereotype people who work in hospitals, but generally speaking, the people who run farms run in a different crowd of people as the people who work in hospitals, and even the people who are in hospitals as patients. And it gives me an opportunity to rub elbows with people that I wouldn't have the privilege of, seeing and talking to about what it is that I do and what I believe in and why I'm passionate about that. And so it gives me an opportunity to support my community. And I think the last thing I will say about this topic specifically is that one of the things that is the worst marketing strategy that you can have is anything involving desperation. I believe Super Troopers, ironically, staged or set in the state of Vermont, although it was actually filmed in upstate New York, not far from where I grew up. The movie Super Troopers, there's a line in there where they said, "Desperation is a stinky cologne." And that is just absolutely right on the money. And I see this at various times throughout the year when you have small farmers, some of whom proudly wear the badge that, "Hey, like, I'm a real farmer because I don't go punch a clock for some other company. I'm a real farmer, so you need to support me." And then when those costs keep rising, but there's a hiccup in the weather or some of the products don't come to market the way that they anticipated and that the way they invested towards beforehand. Now all of a sudden they're desperate and they're saying, "Hey, we really need money." And they're having to reduce their prices and kind of beg publicly on social media. Now, I want to make really clear that I'm not denigrating the idea of farming full time. If I had the opportunity to farm full time, I might. I think that, certainly it's easy for me to say I like the fact that I have off farm income because it's not like I really have a choice, right? I'm not, I don't have enough money where I could just go ahead and farm full time. And I'm saying, no, I'm choosing out of the goodness of my heart to work another job. But I would like to think that I probably would, if nothing else, just to have a little bit of diversity in what I'm doing and not getting completely zoned in on one thing only, and being able to have some perspective and connection to the outside world. And when you see that kind of desperation that comes from a small farmer who has, in my opinion, how I would assess this, they've gotten in over their head because they are not able to weather the storm of a worst case scenario. And to me, that's kind of the benchmark of what I would say when I would think about going full time as a farmer, when I would be willing to give up my off farm income and the professional licenses that I have in medicine. I would be willing to think about doing that at a point when I could no longer deny it. When it was like, they say you don't choose your occupation chooses you. And when I get to a point where I can no longer resist it and it's like kind of comes and hits me over the head, then sure, I would go along with it and I would do it. The thing that I would say if I were giving a recommendation to someone else is number one, don't feel bad about having to invest your time in a way that makes good financial sense. The idea of, the trope of the broke farmer who's chewing on a piece of straw and has a million beat up piece of shit tractors in their yard, that's funny in cartoons and, like, Snuffy Smith type of things, but at the end of the day, you wanna actually have a business model that makes sense and redundancy and not having to worry about the market taking a hiccup that's gonna destroy everything on you. That's really important. Like, if you wanna be a farmer, your farm has to operate. And you have to know your limits and be able to say, okay, am I at a point where I'm ready to take that step where I can do it for better or for worse? Or is it not quite like that? And it's something where I'm close enough where I can just barely eke it out. So I'm going to go for it because I'm close enough. I can kind of, make ends meet. And then when you get there, that close enough isn't actually close enough. And I think that, I mean, that's something that I have done in other areas of my life at different times. And then you wind up paying for it because you realize, oh, yeah. I mean, even in farming, there's areas where I have done that, like when it comes to managing my space or buying animals or getting rid of animals. You think you have it buttoned up, but it's not quite there. I had that idea with butchering, and I tried butchering, and it was just like I realized before I kind of did myself in. And you could have the same conversation about, just business sense when it comes to pricing what you do. And this applies if you're a farmer, no matter what you are, a farmer, a musician, a photographer, a doctor, a lawyer, a writer, whatever it is that you do, content creator, you have to value what you're doing. Otherwise, you will not be able to continue doing it. And if you don't price what you're doing at a scale where you can afford to continue to do it, then what you're doing is going to provide a really good deal in the short term. And then it's going to be gone. And then everybody's going to be moving on like a herd of locusts, a swarm of locusts, looking for the next person that they can like talk down. And then before long, you have a society that doesn't have farmers. And I believe very strongly I was watching a video last night by Ost from Homesteady, big channel. I watched them when I was getting started. Not really my cup of tea, just because I don't really watch a lot of other homestead type channels. But he was making some points about how hard it is to get started in homesteading at this point in time, and it is only going to get harder because it has only gotten harder for the last 100 years or so. And generally, I agree with the point that it has gotten harder to start a homestead and start farming. But I think the most important thing is for more people to push back against that. And we saw a little bit of a turn in the tide culturally during COVID, where people started to realize, hey, this actually isn't normal and we need to do something about it, which is why I made this channel, why my mission in doing all this stuff is to make America farmers again. I hope that if that's something that you agree with, you will drop some comments, let me know what you guys think about this stuff. Subscribe to the channel so that the next time we do one of these streams, you maybe get a notification. I want to continue this conversation to build this culture, not just of people who literally have pigs in their backyard like I do, but a culture of people who are like, hey, yeah, why don't more people do that? And can go into their town and say, hey, you know what? I have an acre of land. Why the hell can't I raise my own pig and have some chickens and have like bacon and eggs that literally comes from my own piece of property if I want to? Like, it's my property. Why shouldn't I do that? So that there can be more opportunities for people to connect and do that. And the more people that are doing it, there's more opportunity for discussion of best practices. So it's not like people just going hog wild, if you'll pardon the expression and the pun. But there are people who can say, hey, listen, you know what? I see what you're trying to do here. You know, I've done that too. And like, oh, cool. Like, I'm just starting with this, right? Where there's more opportunity for mentorship and correction and adjustment rather than saying, oh man, it's so hard. It's so difficult. We can't do it. But rather to look at it and say, the time has never been better. The opportunity has never been better. It's just like what's going on right now with the tariffs. You know, everybody, when the market took a dump and you know, everybody's losing money, there's a handful of people that are looking at that drop due to the tariffs and are saying, great, now's my time to buy and I'm going to make a vault. And a lot of people did that, maybe not a lot, but some people did that. They made a lot of money when the market bounced back up. Potentially you buy the dip. So when everybody is afraid, you need to have the ability to keep your wits about you and stay cool. And frankly, this ties right back into the whole concept of having off-farm income, because with off-farm income, I don't have to get rattled and shaken out of my tree and sell my farm and all my animals every time there's a hiccup in the market. I have the ability to weather storms a little bit and to play a little bit more of a rational game. And anytime in the fall in New England, you see people dumping piglets because they bought them in the spring when piglets are small and they're there and I got them and now it's the fall. And the people who are going to buy pork from me and turn these piglets into pork, well, those people bailed because the price of gas went up too high and they couldn't afford to buy the pork. So now my animals wind up getting together because I bought them cheap from a cut rate breeder. And now my, you know, supposedly castrated male and female that I was going to send to the freezer, well, it turns out he actually had one ball and he managed to impregnate his litter mate. And now I went from having two pigs to having, let's say, 10 piglets in addition to the two. And I was trying to get rid of them in the first place, and now I got a whole litter of babies, and I'm desperate. And so what do you see happening in the fall? Because nobody wants to buy piglets in the fall in New England. People don't want to, you know, winter them. And so it's like, I have piglets for sale. And it starts off really upbeat and positive. Oh, they're great. You know, talking about how wonderful they are. And then within a week or two, you start seeing these posts coming up again and again on different forums, different Facebook groups. And then it starts to go into the, oh, like, you know, no reasonable offer refused. And people are selling piglets for like half or a third of what the market price is. And then they're screwing other people who are actually trying to make a consistent practice and living even of selling animals because they just, you know, things are happening to them by accident. And I think that, well, I mean, honestly, I'm going to be candid with you. I forgot exactly where I was going with that. If any of you remember kind of where I was, you can drop that in the live chat, and I would be forever indebted. It happens a lot, but I guess my point is to say that whenever things get tough, when you are running a business the right way, you're able to look at downtrends, dips in the market, problems, if you want to call it that, and you can make something good out of it. And so to tie that back in with Ost's video from Homesteady talking about how like, oh, it's so hard to find butcher shops and there's this and that. It's like, yes, that's true. It is. I was one of those butcher shops and I closed down. And that's another video for another time that I would love to talk about. But the point is, that means that there's room for other people who are like, you know what? I wanted to butcher my pigs and I couldn't find anybody to do it. Well, the hell with it. You know what? I'm going to do it myself. That is the pioneering spirit of why shouldn't I do it? instead of, "Oh, who do I have to ask for permission? Is it okay? Do I need somebody to come in and, like, inspect my pigs and my fencing and make sure they're putting their turds in the right corner of the yard?" Or are we the type of people that say, "Hey, you know what? How did people get here from the last, like, however many thousands, millions of years, depending on your religious worldview? Either way, we've been dealing just fine without a lot of regulatory oversight and, nanny state nonsense. We've been doing a good job with that without that for quite a long time." And so if people have that mindset to say, "No, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and do it," and then they can come and tell me why I have to get rid of my pigs, and if they think I have to get rid of my pigs, then let these, council members from the town board, let them come and get it themselves. And better yet, you go out there, you run for a seat on the town council, and you say, talk to people that are young and that have experienced this and that are of similar mindset and say, "You know what? We can't raise our own food in our own town. We have to buy food that is imported from overseas, that is owned by overseas markets, and we have the opportunity to grow food ourselves. Why aren't we allowed to do that?" And you start making that change. You got to become that change that you want to see. Now, I realize I've rambled on for a little bit. I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to me. I promise that I could go on at length. Like, I haven't even, I'm just getting warmed up, frankly. And I got a lot to say about the regulations when it comes to small farms because we need people who are willing to stand up and say, "Okay, enough with the regulations. We need to take the handcuffs off of small farmers and let us actually take the market share back from those five massive corporations that are greedy and unethical and all that other stuff, not by regulating them more. Regulations are what got us into this problem in the first place, but by peeling back regulations so small farmers have the opportunity to compete on a local level so that I can feed people in my neighborhood. Sorry, hope I didn't bump the mic. So I can feed people in my neighborhood, in my community, and in my state without having to go through an act of Congress in order for that to happen. And there is legislation in different states and even federally. If anybody is familiar with the Prime Act, Senator Thomas, Congressman Thomas Massey introduced that, and that is something that is basically going to make a nationwide policy. And I'm going to do a whole stream about this next week, I promise, and maybe more beyond that because I am really fired up about this. The idea that consenting adults should be allowed to buy meat from each other, especially if it's being grown and harvested in the same state. So you're totally legal to sell meat that has been imported from another country and packaged halfway across your own country and brought into your store has been raised with, marginally ethical practices. That's totally fine. No problem there whatsoever. But if you're caught selling meat that is from a farm right across town where everybody can go and inspect and see how it's raised, see the health of the animals, talk to the farmer and shake his hand, you go right to jail for doing that. Unless you have the blessing of the USDA because their inspector is what makes the world go round and makes us all safe. And that's the reason why I can't sell my pork in a store because I have to go through a USDA processor. There's a lot of other butchers that can process without the USDA label, but that doesn't do me any good. And I better stop before I continue ranting, and then we're going to go for another 30 minutes on this, and it's going to be dark, and I'm going to be sitting here holding a flashlight on my face just so that we can keep the conversation going. Anyways, I really appreciate those of you who are still here. I appreciate everybody who's maybe watching this after the stream, tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. I would love to know comments. If you guys have questions, thoughts, did I get all this wrong? Some of it wrong. If you're not subscribed, I'm assuming that if you've been watching for however long you've been watching, you're probably subscribed, but I would love to see you in future chats if you have not subscribed yet. So go ahead and do that. And maybe even, send a link to my page to a friend and say, "Hey, you know what? This clown is really going off about the regulations that are affecting small farmers. Maybe you should jump in here and set them straight in the next live stream." Because I'm always open for debates and disagreements. And so, I may get into some more dicey topics that kind of intersect with the world of agriculture and farming. But until then, guys, um, let's make America farmers again because that's ultimately what we need to have independence in our food supply and our food system. And America was much better off when we didn't have five companies that controlled all the meat that was being eaten and sold in this country. And it shouldn't be that way. There's no good logical reason why it should be that way. But until next time, I will see you guys. Have a good weekend. Oh, actually, you know what? Before I go, I uploaded a video yesterday about the best breed of piglets. If that's something anybody is interested in, the best breed of piglets, and kind of my take on that question as a whole, maybe pop in and watch that video and see what you think. I'd love to know what you think the best breed of piglets are. But I'm going to leave that as a question. I'm not going to spoil the video for you. So go watch that, and we'll see you guys